Hello and welcome to Automators. I'm Rosemary Orchard and I'm joined as always by my co-host David Sparks, and we're going to talk about how to automate technology to make magic happen. And in this case, we're upgrading some of your magic. Hey David, how are you today?
I am great, Rose. I haven't talked to you for a while. I miss talking to you. I miss talking about automation. We got all these cool betas going around.
Yeah. So much broken stuff.
And we got a great guest today.
Yes. Welcome to the show. Actually, Zachary Lyman. Hi.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So for people who don't know, Zachary Lyman is the creator of Jellycuts. And Jellycuts is a great application to enhance shortcuts experiences potentially. We're going to have plenty of fun things to talk about today.
I mean, Zach built his own interface to make creating shortcuts easier, and we're going to get into that. We got a link in the show notes. My only warning to the listeners, and I got to do this, I'm sorry, Zach. When you go watch the demo video, he picked the most awesome music. So if you are okay singing it for a week after you watch the video, leave the audio on. If you're not, you should hit mute immediately and watch the video. But anyway. Sorry,
it is definitely an earworm.
I woke up singing the Jellycuts demo music today, and I have you to blame for this. But either way,
that's fair.
Yeah. So you were a developer, and you've made some really cool stuff for us automators. But I thought, why don't we start? Just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a high school senior this year. Well, going into my senior year, I've been working on iOS apps for about 2 or 3 years now. But I didn't really get started until, I guess, 2 Marches ago, the March of 2020, when someone reached out to me and asked if I wanted to help out on an iOS app, and I agreed, and then just started going from there.
Yeah, so he's a high school senior, and he made an IDE for shortcuts. I am feeling like I am completely useless at this point. Maybe I should just go jump off a bridge. I don't know.
David, you're a lawyer. You've chosen to do different things up until this point. That doesn't mean you failed.
Anyway, that's impressive, Zach, because this app is really great, and they've only got a few years into it. That's super impressive.
Yeah.
So what have you done, Rose?
So I'm 30, feeling slightly inadequate. No, it's fine. Everybody takes a different path through life, and just because you start out super early on something doesn't mean it's going to be your thing forever. But Zach, I think you've got a pretty good thing going here.
Thank you.
I'm curious, how did you come up with the idea for Jellycuts? Because Jellycuts isn't just a different UI to drag and drop Lego bricks, which is what Shortcuts does. It's a text-based development environment which generates shortcuts, and the first couple of times I saw this I was like, I don't my brain doesn't get this, and I'm a developer. Okay, so I use an IDE all day, and it, I have all these things where I type stuff and magic happens, but for some reason my brain couldn't fathom doing this with shortcuts until I sat down and actually properly played with it for a while. But how did you come up with the idea?
So I was bored at at work, and I was like, I want to do something on my break. I was like, oh well, I guess I can code some stuff, and I like working with shortcuts and just making automations. So I was like, I wonder if I can combine the two and kind of code while also making shortcuts, so I can do something. Because I can't code my apps while I'm not home because I need my laptop.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, well, what can I code while I'm not at home? So I decided I'll try and figure out something out with shortcuts. So I saw something on the shortcuts Reddit actually saying that you can edit shortcuts by changing the plist. And from there, I don't know how the idea came up, but I was just like, oh, if I can edit them there, I can make text that'll convert into those plists.
Yeah.
And create shortcuts based on that. So the idea kind of just spiraled out of me wanting to code outside of my computer, on my phone, into what can I code on my phone easily.
Yeah. I believe plist stands for preferences list, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So for people who are thinking, I'm still not quite sure what that means. If you imagine just a configuration file that gets loaded in, That's what it is. It's basically a do this, just like a bunch. File is a list of text commands. This is a kind of the same thing, only with more complex formatting.
Yeah, it's like
So
fancy JSON.
yeah, fancy JSON. Is a very good way to put it.
A little history lesson. Back in the workflow days, that was a method that they used to allow you to export and share shortcuts or workflows. And then when the workflow got purchased by Apple, there was a couple years of uncertainty whether Apple was going to make that a thing or not. And now it seems like they fully embraced it. And this, the export methods that we've got coming with iOS 15, and as Zach has already discovered with the plist stuff, we are able to edit those files and create and move shortcuts that way. So that just gave you a vector into the application.
Yeah, give me just a quick path, right, to edit them.
Yeah. So you said that one of the things that you enjoy doing is creating shortcuts. What are the kinds of shortcuts that you use most frequently? Do you have a couple of examples, maybe?
Most frequently, I don't use it as much right now because I'm on spring or summer break, but I have a shortcut that pulls my school's assignments thing. So where they store all of our assignments, and I can pull that into just reminders on my phone.
Yeah.
So that was really useful, especially for virtual learning, where I couldn't keep track of all the assignments I got all the time. So I was able just to pull them right off and put them on my phone. So that was super nice.
Okay, so let me stop you there. Let me stop you there with that one. So it's a web service probably from the school where the assignments are getting posted.
Yeah. We use Canvas. So Canvas allows you to have like RSS feeds of all your assignments and stuff. And calendars. So you can have like a calendar and RSS feed. So
so that once you have an RSS feed, that makes it real easy.
Yeah. So it was really easy just to mix the calendar they give me and the RSS feed they give me together and just make assignments off of that.
Yeah, that's a really smart way to do it. How did you handle processing things that you'd already seen? Did you just check back to see in, say, like the note of the reminder if it was there, or do you just run it once and you grab that week and then the next week you run it again?
Yeah, so I ran it every Monday morning because that's a lot of our assignments were posted Monday morning. So I'd run it Monday morning and have it just gather everything from the week. And then I just like periodically check on Canvas to make sure nothing else showed up randomly, but that's usually what I would use.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you could build something with like a unique ID and stick it in the note of the reminder, but that feels like it's going to get very complicated very quickly. And as I'm sure you're familiar with, sometimes keeping things simple is the best approach.
Yeah, definitely.
So how did you get started with, coding for, in general? Because you said, you helped out a couple of Marches ago with an iOS app. Did you already know Swift before that? Or was it just that you had a great idea and somebody brought you on?
I actually started programming Swift when it came out. So back in, my school's like an enrichment program. And so in the enrichment program, back when Swift came out, I wanted to do something with it. So I guess that was 2015 or 2014. I was like, I want to do a project on that. So my enrichment teacher let me and another student make a game in Swift. So that's where I first had my first experience with it. I didn't learn really much at all from that, but it's what put me on the path towards learning. And then I just continued to kind of work on it and continuously just keep learning Swift. So I was building small apps that never made it anywhere up until someone invited me onto an app that they wanted to build and wanted me to program. So that's where I really learned a lot of what I know now because I needed to make an app that would work on the App Store.
Yeah.
So I guess I've just been learning Swift, just building on it as I go.
Yeah, that makes sense. What kind of resources have you been using for our other listeners who are curious? I want to learn Swift as well. Obviously, I'm guessing when Swift first came out, that's when there were the Apple resources, and that was it. But nowadays, of course, there's a little bit more out there.
When I first started off, I was using YouTube, just like YouTube tutorials, and that's what I've really used for a long time. I'll just go on YouTube, and if I want to learn something, I'll look up what I want. And then also Stack Overflow and Hacking with Swift have been really good, especially Hacking with Swift because those tutorials are just perfect. Like they tell you exactly what you need to know for what you're trying to do. So
Yes.
that's what I've been using a lot more recently because I've gotten more into the Swift UI stuff. So using that Swift UI reference is nice.
Yes, yeah, yeah. No, I've heard very good things about hacking with Swift, and I've done some of the little bits on there as well. Unfortunately, I have that slight problem of having a day job and needing a bit more time to do all of the things in a day. Where I'm sitting here podcasting. I could be learning Swift, David. I could be learning Swift, man. But it's okay. I don't think we're losing any great apps by me sitting here podcasting. In fact, I think we're getting a lot more out of it this way. So Zach, yeah, I'm just taking a look at Jellycuts here, and we'll dive into a little bit more of the detail of this in a moment. But obviously, this is a written language. Okay, so instead of Lego blocks, we've got text. Did you base this text on Swift, or did you base it on another language?
It's mostly based on a lot of it's based on Swift and how Swift kind of declares things, but
Yeah.
a lot of the community, like the shortcuts community, knows JavaScript from what I found.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I've taken things from JavaScript and used them in the language. So like no like variables aren't like you don't declare your types on variables or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing I took, I guess, from Swift and kind of from JavaScript at the same
Yeah.
time. But it's mostly, it's a mix of Swift and JavaScript to get what it is now. But I've been slowly expanding it more. And it'll probably go more in the direction of Swift just because that's what I know more of.
Yeah.
But as I learn more JavaScript, there may be more JavaScript-esque things that show up.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm not surprised that a lot of shortcuts users know JavaScript. First of all, there's, of course, the shortcuts action to run JavaScript on a web page, which I'm sure a lot of people have hacked. And if people haven't played with that yet, they should do it. Do it. It's a bookmarklet. Just think of it as a bookmarklet. You can do things. And of course, we've got other great applications like Scriptable and Drafts, and even Omni's applications, which have got Omni automation in them, which uses JavaScript. All of them use JavaScript. So it's not a surprise to see people who are familiar with JavaScript. But I'm pleased you haven't just limited yourself to it because, of course, shortcuts isn't Swift. It's not JavaScript.
Yeah.
It's not Ruby. It's certainly not PHP. It's its own thing. So yeah, making your own here definitely to me makes sense. And I have to say, I'm really glad you didn't do typed variables where something has to be a string. And then when I want to change it later to be an integer, it breaks things because Shortcuts doesn't force that on you either. If you tap on a variable, then you might see as text, but then you can change it to as dictionary and things like that. So it's not strongly typed either, at least from my perspective. So I'm very glad that you didn't force us down that path.
Yeah, I definitely want to stick to how Shortcuts does things where nothing is set in stone, really. Because, you can just change a variable completely, like halfway through a shortcut. So I wanted that to be possible in Jellycuts.
Yeah.
And a lot of the declaring your types comes when you use the variable with like the casting to text or casting to a number and stuff.
Yes, yeah. And for people not familiar with casting, it's where you say, I'm going to take this as this kind of thing. I'm going to pick this up and it's going to be text now, or I'm going to pick this up and it's going to be a URL. And text, taking text and making it into a URL is fairly easy, but taking numbers and making them into a URL is something. I mean, you're probably going to break your shortcut if you do that, whether you do that in Shortcuts or Jellycuts or indeed any other application. I think that's probably going to break things. People, please do try that at home and let me know, because 8.8.8.8 is a DNS. So maybe it'll work. I don't know. We'll find out. Somebody will let me know, I'm sure. We always get plenty of feedback.
Zach, in addition to making an impressive application, I am actually really impressed with your documentation. I'm not a developer. And, I got the app, I played with it, but then I went on your website at jellycuts.com, and the documentation there is very well made. So even a bozo like me has been able to start writing Jellycuts programming. Did you do the documentation yourself?
I did, yeah. It's actually... The documentation is actually generated off of the code base, like automatically.
Okay.
So a lot of it, I wrote a lot of that by myself. There are a few things that are like handwritten.
Yeah.
And I've been working on a documentation upgrade to make it even better. But I wrote the documentation by myself.
I mean, that is really great, because it does, if you're listening to this and and you're saying, oh man, this sounds like it's too much for me, it's not. I would recommend go check out jellycuts.com and just click on the documentation tab, because he really does walk you through with some simple ones. And then, that's the language of automation. You get a couple simple things and you start chaining them together. And before you know it, you've got something fairly complex. And one of the things I like about this is it solves a problem with shortcuts of duplicating and modifying shortcuts. It still isn't easy to do that, like on the Mac,
Yeah.
we can I'm a Keyboard Maestro fan, and I can select 100 blocks of Keyboard Maestro, hit Command C, go into another Keyboard Maestro script and paste them all at once, and then make my modifications. But with shortcuts, it's only one at a time. And with this language you have, I can just copy a text file or duplicate a text file, make a couple tweaks, and then have an entirely separate shortcut built out of it. So you really are giving us something here that we need.
Yeah, a lot of the really big point of it was copy and pasting. Before shortcuts had copy and paste itself, it was really nice to be able to do that. Yeah. And then, just being able to copy and paste more than just like a single block is really nice.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it really is. That's something I struggle with frequently in shortcuts, where I have say 5 or 6 items in an if, and I need to put the same items into an else and just change them. And of course I could set a whole bunch of variables and then pull those variables out and do it afterwards. But once I've already set things up, I found myself dragging in repeats and wrapping a repeat around the block and then duplicating the repeat, which gets everything inside of it. And then I end up leaving the repeat there, because repeat 1, guess what? It doesn't do anything. It just skips it. But it feels really hacky to be doing that, especially right now on iOS 15, where, how do I put this? Drag and drop is feeling very broken. Things don't land where I expect them to. I have sent feedback to Apple on this. I am sure the Shortcuts team is aware of this. But yeah, it's one of those things where, it's difficult. And also things like, I'm going to use a really basic example here, setting the volume on your device, okay? So you can type a number, and then if you tap and hold on the volume, then you can select the number. It feels pretty janky.
It's precious.
You use
it's like sometimes you have to hit it just right in order to register, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
I think that's just part of the beta process.
Yeah, I mean, it's been like that on iOS 14 as well, and iOS 13. But in Jellycuts, I can type set volume with a capital V on volume, because this is using camel case, which is, where everything's lowercase except the start of the next variable, which is uppercase. And then I type the number in, and that's it. So if I want 73, for whatever reason, maybe 73 is the perfect number, I can type 73, and I'm not dragging on a little slider trying to get my finger into exactly the right spot for it to hit 73. I just type it and it's good. And so that that's the sort of thing where, even if you think, oh, my shortcuts are super basic, I'm not going to get any benefit from Jellycuts, it's definitely easier to tweak things like that here in text and then send your shortcut back into Shortcuts than it is to, sit there fiddling around for 45 minutes trying to get your volume and brightness levels exactly right. I mean, I don't spend 45 minutes on it, but then I am constantly peeved that everything is just off by a little bit. Like, it's not massively off, it's just off by a bit, and that frustrates me.
Yeah, the Shortcuts editor does have a knack for just getting things just like kind of wrong when you do.
It's so close to being
anything.
right, but then it's wrong, and that frustrates me. But I understand why they don't have like a spinner of 0 to 100, because imagine it's on 0 and you want 100. You're going to be really frustrated there. So, I think they're in a spot where the slider for most people is perfectly logical, but for those of us who really want to dial it in and get things super, perfectionist, maybe not the right word, but accurate is probably a better word, then this enables us to do that without needing to, know how to program even, because I just typed in set volume and it was right there. It didn't come up when I typed volume, people. You need to check in the documentation for what the action is called. But if you type, it looks to me, Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, that most of the time, all of these meta actions and so on are using basically the name of the shortcut just camel cased.
Yeah. A lot of it is just the name of whatever the Shortcuts action is. And then, camel cased. Sometimes it's shortened just because Shortcuts has long names for some of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
odd names, but for the most part, it's pretty close to the shortcut's name.
Yeah, like so there's repeat and then there's repeat each instead of repeat with each, but that just saves a little bit of time typing. And of course, if I start typing repeat, so I type rep, then it's suggesting a couple of things like replace text, and because there's nothing that for it to repeat with each on, but it will suggest things at the bottom as well, just like you would expect from an iOS app with autocomplete, only this is a little bit better than autocomplete, let's face it.
Like another problem this solves is when you have a long shortcut. I mean, I just did this yesterday and I was scrolling it. And of course, I moved a shortcut step, because it happens when you're scrolling with shortcuts. You, have you guys experienced that where you accidentally move a block? And so, like something like this, you just don't have problems like that. But I would recommend this for people who are not programmers, because I just feel like you always want to work on that gray matter between your ears. If you know how to make shortcuts, this is really easy to kind of follow through. And Zach has done all the hard work. Like, how did you figure out all these names and all these calls? I mean, did you just pull apart existing files, or was there a resource for you?
Yeah, I spent about 6 of the, or not even, maybe like close to 10 of the 11 months of making the beta of Jellycuts, just tearing apart shortcuts itself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I got to the point where I had shortcuts that would pull apart themselves and parse out the action I wanted just so I could get values from it. Because the only way that I could find any of the values I needed from shortcuts was just rip apart existing shortcuts and figure out how they work. Because none of this is documented.
No.
To a point, there is a documentation on GitHub that I'll have to find, but it's just about like the general parameters of shortcuts, but nothing specific for any of the actions, which is what I needed.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time reverse engineering the way shortcuts worked and just pulling out individual, like, I guess, just individual dictionary entries that I need to put into the P list for each action, which took quite a while. And I'm hoping to make that easier in future for myself, but it was definitely slow.
Yeah, I can imagine. Back when shortcuts was workflow, I had a shortcut and an Airtable, so the shortcut basically went through the P list of a shortcut and it found all of the action names. It looked them up in Airtable, found the icon, and then created like an indented bullet list of all the steps so that I could document it. And the way that I created that was highly technical. I don't think anybody's ready for this. I dragged and dropped every single action into a single shortcut, and then I fixed it. That's what I did. Don't recommend. That took way too long. But it was what I could do back in the day. So it worked, and I was able to create some pretty fancy looking blog posts back in the day. I've migrated to CMS once since then, and I'm in the process of migrating CMS again. So I suspect some of that's broken and will get further broken, but I'll have to go back and fix it at some point. This episode of Automators is brought to you by Tech Talk, a podcast from the folks at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. I love finding new shows to listen to, and as well as them being super interesting, it's even better when they slot right into my day and entertain me. And Tech Talk is the show that talks through HPE news, tech insights, and world-class innovations. I recently listened to one of their older episodes on supercomputing and how it's not just for the elites. I particularly found it interesting on the fact that they really want to bring this to the masses, and the fact that everybody actually does have a supercomputer. I think everybody would enjoy this podcast, especially because most episodes are less than 20 minutes, which means you can always slot it into your day somewhere. And if you want to listen to, you can expect topics like how to tackle issues when it comes to high-performance computing, applying tech for the good of the people, planet, and communities, and supercomputing aboard the International Space Station. And the show takes you straight to the source, interviewing some seriously impressive tech leaders, such as Dr. Michael Roberts from the ISS US National Lab, Emily Christensen, a master candidate in applied science data at USC, and Monica Livingston from Intel. Check out Tech Talk wherever you get your podcasts. Search for Tech Talk now, or click the link in the show notes. Our thanks to HPE Tech Talk for their support of this show and Relay FM.
So, Zach, when you put this out into the world, what was the reaction and what surprised you the most about the response to your app?
So when I first put it back out, I guess over a year ago now, for the first like beta post, I got a lot of reaction from the shortcuts community, like the r/shortcuts on
Sure.
Reddit.
Hmm.
Yeah.
A lot of people were like, "Whoa, I really needed this." Like, I was really surprised that other people other than me, like wanted it because I would think, oh, maybe like two or three other people, but there were quite a few people who responded to that and who like actually wanted it and were looking for something exactly like that. And then as like time went, like more and more people kept telling me how much like they would like something like this. And then when I finally got to release, a lot like it got a lot more publicity on the actual full release, which was nice because a lot more people started noticing it and like seeing it and stuff. So that was surprised me a lot and was pretty cool.
It's got to feel good, right? Something you make is out there helping
Yeah.
people. Yeah. What's the craziest thing you've heard of anyone doing with Jellycut so far?
I have seen some people trying to like I've seen people completely break shortcuts with it.
Yeah. I'm
Um,
sure they could. Yeah.
Wait, were they trying to do this or did they just do something really silly?
I'm not sure. I've only ever seen the aftermath of it,
Okay.
but yeah, it was uh, a lot of people. Yeah, are able to use it. A lot of people used it to like make when home screen customization was pretty big. Having shortcuts that would like open your home screen, like go back to the springboard, which was
Hmm.
super easy in Jellycuts, but not easy at all in shortcuts.
Right.
So that was probably the biggest use case during one of the betas back when iOS 14 was
Yeah.
like the customization was coming out.
What are some other examples of things that are easier in Jellycuts than in shortcuts that you hear about?
Making things with big dictionaries. So if you ever like you need to use like a big shortcuts dictionary with either like icons for whatever. So a lot of people will put icons into their shortcuts and stuff. So if you're doing that in shortcuts, the editor gets really laggy because
Yes.
just the dictionaries for some reason just completely kill it. And in Jellycuts, you can just use the JSON editor and the dictionary part of it to put them all in there, and then you never have to actually look at those while you're editing. So I
Hmm.
think that's a lot easier in Jellycuts is doing something like that. And
Yes.
then also anything that you need repetitiveness in is super simple because you can just copy and paste the same text over and over again and just change a few things, whatever you need.
Yes. Personally, whenever I'm including a large dictionary in a shortcut, I actually save it as a file in iCloud and pull it in because then I can edit it with the
Yeah.
JSON editor, JAYSON.
Hmm.
And that means that I can also edit it using a different shortcut, so I can add things to it. Though I have to say, nowadays I've migrated a lot of that to DataJar, where it's information that changes semi-frequently, but reference lists are still just good old JSON files in Dropbox.
Yeah, I also feel like this is really useful if you make a text heavy shortcut because working with text in shortcuts is also
Oh
very
yeah.
precious. And this is something where you just got a text editor, you can type the text in, you can block and copy it. You don't have to worry about landing in it. I mean, every time I get near anybody on the shortcuts team, I beg them to make like a button that would allow you to expand the text field to take over full screen. You know, like if you like when you're in the text editing shortcuts, rather than force us to try and work in with those two or three lines on the screen, like just give us a
Yeah.
button where we can just like have the text field take over the screen.
David, did you see what they did with the list action in iOS 15 in shortcuts?
No, I haven't yet. What would they've done?
Okay. I'm sorry to break this to you. Okay, to people, you're going to get David's reaction live on air. So, a list is an ordered list in shortcuts, which
Sure.
means that it won't randomly change the position of things. Technically, lists in programming are usually unordered. So, theoretically,
Yeah.
whatever order you put things in, they might come out differently. But they've been ordered lists in shortcuts for a while. They've now added item one, item two, etc. on the left. And that takes up approximately 50%
Oh
of
yeah.
the list
So
item.
so the text field gets even
So
smaller. Yeah.
so the text field is half the width,
Yeah.
and right now scrolling in that field is broken,
Yeah.
and there's no text wrapping. So I have found that I am putting things in a text block to just type the URL and make sure it's right, and then copying and pasting from there into the list item.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating. And as soon as Jellycuts has an iOS 15 beta, I'll be using that because I miss being able to just easily work with lists.
But we're early in the beta too, so I'm sure they're they're aware of that stuff. But But for a long time, I've recommended, writing extended text for shortcuts in something like Drafts or Tot or
Hmm.
whatever your text editor of choice is, and just copying and pasting because it's bad at that. But to get back to my point, when you're writing shortcuts with Jellycuts, it's just a text file, and you can actually see all the text, and it all is there, and you don't have to worry about like landing the cursor at the exact spot you want it. And so that, I think I would add that as a third reason to give it a shot. But I really just, just step back for a minute. I am just so pleased about a couple things. Number one is that we have this community of people like Zach and Simon and all the other folks coming up with these great third party like bolt on shortcuts tools. I mean, these are tools to make shortcuts. They're not really anything more than that, but there's a market out there. People are supporting these people and allowing them to make stuff. And also, frankly, I'm thankful that Apple is taking kind of a liberal approach to these tools and allowing them to be released. I mean, make it an IDE for shortcuts. I don't know that that was a sure thing you were going to get that approved.
Yeah, that was scary, the review process, getting it onto the App Store.
Yeah.
It
I
was
mean,
that was
did they send it back to you, or were you just, biting your nails the entire time going, are they going to say yes? Are they going to say yes?
it took them almost 2 weeks on the dot to give me my first response.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Okay.
it was a rejection
Of course.
for a part of the app, not the editor. They were fine with the whole shortcuts part, but
Phew.
the Jellycuts bridge was an issue.
Okay.
And that got severely changed in the release version just because the version that was in it did break the one of the rules, but like I didn't see it at first, but I guess yeah, their description of it made sense eventually. But yeah, I spent a while with them in app review trying to figure out what was wrong, but it did eventually get approved after about a month.
And I'm not trying to be like an Apple cheerleader, but I do think, frankly, the shortcuts team is all for stuff like this. And I think they
Oh
want
yeah,
this stuff to get out there because, they can't make a text editor, JavaScript shortcuts builder because that's really against the whole nature of the app. I mean, the idea is that my sister, who doesn't listen to the automators, can make a shortcut to, make her whatever, right? She's not going to learn
yeah.
this stuff. But there's a group of us that understand that if we go a step further with it, it can get easier and faster for us. And we want that. They're not allowed to make it, so I think they're more than happy to have someone like you putting this out there.
Yeah, no, the shortcuts team is great. They've been really supportive of Jellycuts the whole time. From the few of them I've talked to,
Yeah.
and during like the WWDC labs and stuff, they were really cool about everything.
I guess some of them are using it, honestly, because I mean, they're making a lot of shortcuts.
All right, Zach. People have gone, a bit into the episode now, and assuming they've never started with Jellycuts before, okay, maybe
Mhm.
they've never written with programming before, maybe they have. Our listeners vary. How do they get started? Because obviously, you can't just open Jellycuts and select a shortcut from your entire shortcuts library. There's a little bit of work that maybe you need to do if you want to take an existing shortcut or if you want to get a shortcut from Jellycuts into shortcuts. Where do people start?
Yeah, so to start off, once you've gotten through the onboarding and allowing untrusted shortcuts and everything, which I'm assuming most people have, you can start looking at the documentation and the example shortcuts provided or Jellycuts provided to
Mhm.
just get familiar with everything. And then once you think you're ready to like move on to making your own stuff, you can use the import feature to import an existing shortcut from the app into Jellycuts. So like from shortcuts into Jellycuts, and then that'll get you about 80% of the way into converting it, but shortcuts leaves some data out of their p lists and doesn't give me access to everything that you entered in the shortcuts app. So
Right.
there is some, you do have to go through it and look at everything and just double check it to make sure everything's correct, because there will be missing data and stuff just because of the limited data I have available to me.
Hmm.
But that'll get you a lot of the way there to figure out what you want to do in Jellycuts or what you want to make.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, when I opened it, I was like, I'm just going to click the plus and create Jellycut. And then I gave it a name and I clicked submit. And then I opened it and I was like, okay, what do I do now?
Yeah.
I should probably go into starter Jellycut and go from there. And it's like, okay, so look at this. Now look at the starter actions. This makes sense. And I added a few things to it and thought, okay. And of course there's the share. But yeah, it makes sense, especially once you dive into the settings button and the learning center. The basics there actually, that pops up when you first open the app, but me being me, I'm there going, I'm a developer, I know this stuff, I just swipe through it without reading. You can bring that back, people. You can bring that back. Settings, learning center, and it's all right there.
Yeah, the learning center is definitely it's pretty
Yeah.
that's definitely helpful for figuring out the basics of the language and like the tools provided and everything. So if
Yes,
you have any
yes.
questions, that has most of the answers.
Yeah, and I have to say, obviously, variables var welcome equals shortcut input or whatever it is, that's useful. Being able to name magic variables. I just want to say thank you for this. Thank you. Because the number of times where it's like updated text, but there's 6 versions of updated text in my shortcut. I don't care about the ones called updated text. I just want to rename this one, but especially when things are a little bit broken, it's a little bit difficult to do that. And I will fully accept that's my fault for running a beta. That's life. But being able to rename a magic variable by putting it's 2 greater than symbols after like a text action, and then saying what the name of the variable is. Once I saw that in the learning center, I was like, okay, yeah, we're onto something good here, because it really is good. And I also just want to point out, for people who are looking at documentation going, oh, I wish I could see this whilst editing a Jellycut, tap the little arrow in a box in the top left and it opens in split screen. So you're going to want to do this on an iPad. But yeah, that's really helpful. I appreciate the fact that I can have Jellycuts in split screen with the documentation, because that makes my life much easier. So thank you for that feature, by the way.
Yeah, that was recommended by a user. They're like, Scriptable has this, so you should have it too.
Yes.
And I was like, that's a great idea. So that one
Yes.
is Simon. He's the genius behind the split out documentation.
Yes. I knew I'd seen it before there, but I saw it in Jellycuts and went, yes, thank you. Because it does make it much easier. Being able to see things, even if you know what you're doing. I frequently, I know what I'm doing when I program or write a script for a draft section, but I still usually have the documentation open in a split screen. So when I go, wait a minute, what was it if I wanted to do a multi-select in a prompt? I can just look it up, because it's easier to look it up than it is to remember it, try it, get it wrong, look it up, fix it, get it right. That's how I work. But autocomplete, I have to say, does do quite a bit of the heavy lifting here. So that's good.
Yeah, the autocomplete. Yeah, was definitely a very needed feature for writing on an iPhone, especially.
Yes.
This episode of the Automators podcast is brought to you by Audible. Go to audible.com/automators to hear stories that speak to you and start listening with a 30-day trial. Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment. They have the largest selection of audiobooks around, featuring bestsellers, new releases, and everything in between, as well as thousands of binge-worthy podcasts all in one place. As an Audible member, you get 1 credit every month to spend on any title in their entire premium selection, and these titles are yours to keep forever in your Audible library. Whether you're wanting to pick up that new novel everyone is talking about, or to finally tick off that bucket list title, and if you don't have anything you're looking for this month, those credits will roll over for up to a year, so you can binge the next series whenever you get the time. As an Audible member, you also get access to their Plus catalog. It's filled with thousands of hours of audio entertainment, from guided meditation, ad-free podcasts, and a large selection of exclusive series. This is included in your membership for you to listen to whenever you like. You can download titles and listen offline at any time in the Audible app. So no matter where you are or what you're doing, you can always pick up right where you left off. Now, I was so happy when I heard that Audible was a sponsor of this show. I couldn't wait to do an ad read, because I have been an Audible subscriber for, I think, over 10 years now. I've listened to so many different Audible books over that time. I listen to fiction nearly exclusively through Audible, but I also listen to self-help books. I also like to get Audible books to play in the car with the kids on long road trips. In fact, I have a recommendation for you on one of those right now, and that would be Jasper Ford, That's with two F's, F-F-O-R-D-E. Jasper Ford has the Last Dragon Slayer series. And my daughter and I listened to this on a long car trip when she was like 10, and we had so much fun listening to that series together. We actually still talk about some of the characters in that series. So Jasper Ford wrote this very funny series. It's a kind of a young adult thing, but adults can listen to it and enjoy it too, called The Last Dragon Slayer, and I highly recommend that. Whether you're looking for something to entertain you while you're working from home, for your next long car ride, or even for some time spent at the gym, Audible is right there with thousands of titles to choose from. So go check it out yourself. And as a new member, you can try out Audible for 30 days. Just visit audible.com/automators or text automators to 500-500 to get started. That's audible.com/automators or text automators to 500-500. I hope you love Audible as much as I do. Our thanks to Audible for their support of the Automators and all of Relay FM. All right, so as we're recording this, Apple is in the midst of the betas for iOS 15 and Mac OS Monterey, and Shortcuts is coming over to the Mac. And I understand Jellycuts is too.
Yes, yeah. Jellycuts is coming to the Mac with a native Swift UI app.
And the cool thing is, I mean, you already kind of had something going on. You have a bridge mode in the existing app where you can actually write code on your Mac for Jellycuts on iPhone and iPad. And now you're going to be writing the code on the Mac for the Mac Shortcuts. How's that coming?
Really well. There's a few betas out right now to some beta testers. So far, it's been going really well. And the Shortcuts integration that I got working, I think, is really nice and quicker than the iPhone just because of the Shortcuts command line tool that I have access to on Mac. Yeah. But I've been really liking working on the Mac app.
I should mention that I am part of the group of testers for macOS. I've only played with Jellycuts a little bit, but as far as I'm aware, Zach, it is a closed beta, so you've not got a huge number of people on it right now just because it's so early in the beta process.
Yeah, it's currently a closed beta, but there are signups on the Jellycuts Twitter if you do want to try it out. But yeah, it's not an open beta yet, just because it's just not ready for that.
Yeah, there's no point having 150 people tell you the same thing's broken when 5 people can find the exact same thing and maybe even help by providing reproduction steps. And it's a little easier to do with a smaller group. I appreciate that. So thank you for letting me in there. And
of course.
Yeah. Well, I figured there are a couple of perks to being one of the Automators co-hosts here, David. So that, I mean, it's really interesting as well seeing that, because immediately I thought, oh, are we going to have the same kind of import process? And so I'm really glad you're using that command line or the Shortcuts command line to do this, because that does make it much easier. And I think Shortcuts obviously itself has a whole new market. When now it's coming to the Mac, people will take it more seriously, see it as an application that maybe they should actually use now. I think Jellycuts especially is going to be, more frequently used by people on Mac OS, because there is going to be the ability to, just do that magic import. And of course, the keyboard in front of you. Do you find it faster to create shortcuts using Jellycuts than Shortcuts itself now? I'm pretty certain you do. Yeah. I mean,
I find it way quicker to do it.
I mean, you've got a little bit of an in having named all the functions and everything yourself, right? But
yeah, I've seen the functions hundreds of thousands of times at this point. I know. Too much of my brain is taken up.
And that's just the learning curve. I mean, I think if somebody wants to kind of go down this rabbit hole, once you learn them, it is definitely faster, but the learning process is going to be slower. But it's like I was saying earlier, this is just kind of a fun thing, honestly, and more efficient in a lot of ways. I mean, you still have a lot of the same limitations on the Mac version of Shortcuts that you have on iPhone and iPad. So having a text-based solution to create them still has real benefits. I mean, I was just thinking, why not, like on the Mac particularly, create a bunch of the functions as text expander fill-in snippets, and then I could just like crank them out very quickly with text expander. I mean, there's no reason I couldn't.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a possibility to use the other Mac automation tools in tandem with Jellycuts to make it even faster.
Yeah. And I do think you still get a lot of the same benefits. So what are some of the things that you're looking forward to automating on your Mac once all this ships with shortcuts and jelly cuts.
I'm really looking forward to the window management and all the like the shell script that you can run with shortcuts now. I never really
Yeah,
dove into Automator myself,
yeah.
but now that shortcuts is here, I'll probably dive a lot more into it because I already have some ideas flowing for stuff I can do for jelly cuts in shortcuts.
Yeah, I could see you creating your even own custom functions and actions based on shell scripting or even Apple scripting as well, and just bake it right
Yeah.
into the app and save people a lot of trouble of trying to sort that stuff out for themselves.
Yeah, there's definitely things I want to do like that in the future.
Yeah, and the other thing I think that really stands out on the Mac is I think there's this huge opportunity. There's a lot of historical Mac apps that didn't go down the Apple script path because I feel like the developers felt like there weren't enough users to justify the expense of building in, Apple script support. Whereas I think a lot of the same developers are going to be creating shortcuts actions because I think they get a lot more return on investment for creating them. So I expect you're going to have yourself, you're going to be busy keeping up with all those updates as they come out.
Yeah, I'm gonna be busy, especially integrating third party actions when I get to that
Yeah.
soon is
Yeah.
gonna be quite fun.
Fun with quotation marks,
And an
very large air
asterisk.
quotes. Yes.
Yeah.
But
At the
so
same time, you're
how
doing your college apps, right? I mean, I can just,
Yeah.
jeez.
on the other hand, if you're looking at it, say a software engineering course, I think you might have something that's going to put your application closer to the top of the pile here. So how does Jellycuts handle third-party actions right now? Because obviously you can't be expected to have bought, downloaded, and tested every single app out there that has shortcut support. So say, for example, I import a shortcut into Jellycuts, and I've got an action from Scriptable or Toolbox Pro or Shortcutify, or another action, say from OmniFocus or Drafts in there. What happens inside of Jellycuts right now?
Currently on import, it should leave a comment with just the name of the action because that stuff hasn't been brought in yet.
Yeah.
Just because I haven't had time to go through and get all of them and test them all.
Yes.
But I'm looking into ways for like future updates. iOS 15 really derailed my progress on that because that was the next step. But planning on like one of the next updates is bringing third party action support and a way for users to add their own third party actions and stuff and just make it easier for everyone to use third party actions in Jellycuts. Because right now, the best way is just to add a comment and add it in when you get into shortcuts, which
Right.
kind of sucks.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to bring a lot more third party actions in soon.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. So sorry for our listeners. I didn't ask Zach this off the air. Will there be like a repository where people can save third-party actions and contribute to them? So say, for example, I figure out the add task paper to OmniFocus action. Will I be able to share that with other people in some way, be that via sending it back to you and then maybe at some point it makes it into the app, or, just sharing it via, say, a GitHub action, a GitHub repo or something like that?
Yeah, there has been I have thought of ways for letting the community do it. So yeah, one of the ways was having a GitHub repo that people can submit their packages to.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now Jellycuts is based on packages, and the first line you put in every Jellycut is import shortcuts.
Right.
And so I'm thinking for the future, I want to be able to allow the community members to make their own packages in some way or another. And just because of how iOS works and the like app review, having something where someone just uploads to a GitHub repo and it downloads into the app won't be possible. But
No.
having me like check it and then put it into the app definitely will be. So I think that's the route I most likely will go down in the future.
I mean, you could potentially, worst case scenario, allow us to download these actions ourselves and save them into the app, perhaps.
Yeah.
And then, it's on us to keep checking for updates. But with working copy and the sync folder action with a shortcut, maybe we can make some magic happen there, even if app review says no. I'm going to cross my fingers app review says yes, because that would be the best case scenario for everybody. But,
yeah, no, it definitely would be.
If you need ideas, I think a whole community of people who are willing to give you some.
Yeah, and honestly, there's probably people out there that'd be willing to help you, even with more of the heavy lifting too, if you want it. I know you're at a busy point in your life. But I also like the idea of some sort of repository, whether it be GitHub or something else, where developers can just auto submit
Mm-hmm.
language. Because I'm sure there are developers out there that want their, the actions they're creating to be available in Jellycuts. And if you could create some method for them to submit it, that'd be even better to have the developers, create the methods or function calls
Yeah.
at the time they make the app.
Yeah, that's definitely a really good idea to having them like submit something like a file that just defines all their actions. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Maybe we can even figure out something where you can automatically parse the intents file from
Yeah.
Xcode or something, and then have that converted into something that Jellycuts can eat, because it's jelly, so it eats everything, right?
Well, if you're a developer out there and you're listening, find Zach and give him some ideas, because I know there's a lot of developers listening to the show that are supporting shortcuts. So that, hopefully we can help connect you guys.
Just don't swamp him with email, people. We need Jellycuts for macOS Monterey, okay? Priorities.
Yeah. In terms of the overall reception, though, I think it's been really positive, and I really just the only app out there I know that does anything like this. And when I hear it took you 10 months to assemble all of the calls, I think that's why. I don't think anybody else is willing to spend 10 months on it.
I had a lot of free time on my hands. But yeah, the reception was great.
I mean, having free time is one thing, but at the same time, you've got to be very persistent and determined, because I imagine at some points it must have felt like a slog, because you're essentially doing the same thing over and over and over again and hoping that something changes enough for you to see, what is it that is actually here and how does this really work? Because I know sometimes when I'm programming, I do the same thing. I change something. Nope, doesn't work. Try changing it over here. Nope, doesn't work. Try changing it over here. No. Try changing it there. There it works. Oh, now all 4 of them are working. What happened? Yeah, sometimes it's a bit of a slog. So I imagine it must have been a trial at times.
Yeah, it was definitely the first system of the app, because this is actually version 2 of the app. It was completely rewritten about 5 months in, because the first system I had just took too long.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the first version was a complete slog. Just like every time I needed to add an action, it was a ton of work. But then after some re-architecting, made it a lot easier and more bearable.
So I'm guessing you've learned a couple of things as you've gone through this.
Oh yeah, learned quite a few.
Have you got
Too
any
many.
one particular thing that you think, oh wow, yeah, people probably don't know this, but I found this really useful once I figured it out?
Xcode crashes with really big string files. That's what I learned.
That sounds like a problem that I'm guessing many people aren't going to encounter, because it's not like Kindle app ships with all of the books inside of the app. They download them as they need them.
Yeah.
But Jellycuts can't just download anything from a server whenever it wants, because, well, it's not the Kindle app.
Yeah, it's okay to go back and redo things.
Yeah.
If they're like, for a long time I was like, I don't want to redo this. It's like just going to be extra work to redo it. But if redoing it is going to take less time than doing it with your current system,
yeah,
then I think that's okay personally.
Yeah, laying the groundwork for the future so that you can easily expand upon something or improve something, versus I'll just quickly hack this in here 80,000 times, and then you look at the entire thing and it's the Leaning Tower of Pisa made of toothpicks held together with duct tape. Yes, I can definitely see why you would choose to rewrite things. And
yeah,
even as part of the development process, it sometimes feels like it's a big setback to do that. But I know I've done that with everything from writing a simple shortcut to doing more complex things. I was asked the other day to help create a shortcut for somebody for a sourdough starter timer. And I started by doing it as a dictionary and going through a whole bunch of things. And then I thought, you know what? When they want to add an extra step, they're not going to figure out how to add this into the dictionary. So what I did was adjust current date, or adjust previous date, add X amount of time, set timer with label. I just repeated that, however many times. I think it was 13 times. There were 13 timers in the sourdough starter. And so I did that. And you know what? It works. They're using it. And I think that's what counts. So, yeah. I'm sure there's plenty of things that everybody can learn. And I have to say, I've actually found out a couple of things in shortcuts which I couldn't find or I struggled to find inside of the app. Um, and actually knowing the name of all the shortcuts colors is quite useful. So there's purple and grape as well, and pink are colors, but there's also gray blue, gray green, and gray brown. And of course all of the other colors, including tangerine, because everybody loves the tangerine color Mac. Well, I mean, if you're Stephen Hackett, you certainly do. But yeah, there's a lot of hidden gems here, which I found. David, did you find anything secret while you were playing with Jellycuts?
There's a pro version, and I would recommend if you want to go down this road, definitely, send Zach a few bucks. He's got a really generous pro version where you can kind of buy in at whatever level makes sense for you. But you get to customize the editor. You've got the desktop connection, dictionary builder, icon builder, and then of course you can help support development. And that really helped me unlock things like the icon builder was a great idea as well, because it's another thing in shortcuts. It's a total pain in the neck. I mean, I don't know why you can't search the icons and do different things there, but you've got it all covered in the app. So I just feel like in general, if you're willing to spend a little time understanding how to like program these blocks, and it's just short bits of text and the documentation walks you through it. But if you're willing to do that, it just takes a lot of the sharp edges off shortcuts. And it doesn't like break anything. I mean, you go in shortcuts, they still show up as shortcuts. You'll still see the blocks when you go into the shortcuts app. So I'm just really impressed, Zach, with what you've done.
Thank you. Yeah, it was nice to be able to finally code with text instead of the shortcuts actions for me.
And then also, I mean, just going through the process of making an app, dealing with app review, dealing with monetization. I mean, what an amazing learning experience this must be for you. I mean, think of all the things you've learned over the last couple of years since you just decided to start goofing around, with Xcode, and now all of a sudden you have an operating business.
Yeah.
Do your parents and like friends, do you tell them, hey, by the way, I'm a successful app developer now? I mean, what do they say to you when they realize what you're up to?
Yeah, my parents have been super supportive of everything I've done and helping me through everything, especially like with all the Apple stuff.
Yeah.
And then my friends also really supportive of everything. Whenever anyone's like, my parents like have posted stuff and they're like, and my family's like, that's nuts. Like, you are nuts. How have you done that?
Yeah.
Which is just really cool because everyone's super supportive about it.
Yeah, when I was your age, I had a job fixing motorboat engines in 110-degree smoggy Southern California. I was incapable of what you have done at your age. So are you going to become a developer? I mean, what's next for you? Are you going to go, have you decided that you want to go become a baker or something completely separate, or is this a career for you?
I definitely want to continue developing. I'm not sure where or like how, but I definitely want to keep developing as I move through life. So I guess it'll all really be dependent on what I end up doing for college and stuff, which I'm still trying to figure out and everything.
Yeah. Well, my advice to you as someone who has had a few kids go through this is no matter where you end up, you're going to do fine. I mean, I think we all know that Zachary Lyman has a future with this stuff.
Thank you.
Would you say no to an internship at Apple if they offered you one?
Probably not. I'd probably say yeah for an internship.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, I've seen quite a few developers who've done internships with Apple, and Christian, the guy behind Apollo, is one of them.
Yeah,
the Nudget developer, of course. There's some people who are very good developers who've done that, and I always find it super interesting. So you've already got a great app under your belt, so I think you might even get to chill out a little bit while you're doing that. I mean, I say that. I don't think working at Apple is really chilled. I think it's probably got quite a bit going on. I have a feeling they give their interns plenty to do. But without writing an app on the side, from scratch at the same time, perhaps.
I feel like if they put Zach as an intern at Apple, there'd be like some secret button in shortcuts. Nobody would know it. Like maybe an invisible button, and you tap it and suddenly it goes into command line mode. And it was like, how did this get here? I don't know,
Yeah,
man.
and all the shortcuts developers do know it's there. They're just pretending that they don't.
Yeah. Well, either way, what's next for Jellycuts? You've got third-party integration. You've got the Mac stuff coming out. What should users be looking for?
Definitely iOS 15 support coming soon.
Mm-hmm.
I've been working really hard on adapting to Apple's new sharing standards for iOS 15. I had to build an entire signing server for shortcuts recently just to get it to work on iOS 15. So I'm super excited to get that out.
Yeah.
So definitely the iOS 15 support, and then all the Jelly, like the Jelly language evolution stuff that I'm working on. So making Jelly more of a traditional programming language and stuff.
Yeah.
So you can run it in more than just like a shortcuts capacity, I guess, or compile before and stuff. There's more upgrades to the app in general.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing it all, and keep up the great work, everybody. Go check out Jellycuts. Send Zach some support, man, and try this out. Like I've said throughout the show, even if you're not a developer, I think this is something worth checking out. There's a free download, so you don't have to like invest. So just check it out to see what you think, and go on the website, look at the documentation. But I would recommend, if you're listening to the Automators, this may be something you want. I believe anybody that listens to this show, if they spent a weekend learning Zach's Jelly language. I mean, it's a nice combination of really JavaScript and a couple other things. You could pick it up and you could be making shortcuts faster and more efficient and solve all those problems we've been talking about throughout the show today.
Thank you.
Before we finish today, I want to take a quick moment to tell you about another great show here on Relay FM. Roboism is a show by Alex Cox and Kathy Campbell, both of whom have been on our show before. And they explore how artificial intelligence, machine learning, and digital assistants are affecting our future. Explore humanity behind the bots that are quickly becoming a part of our everyday life at relay.fm/roboism, or search Roboism whenever you get your podcasts. The episode today is brought to you by HPE Tech Talk and Audible. And just as a note, our last episode was brought to you by Discourse, not Discord, as some of you may have misheard in one of our ads. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another great episode for you. Goodbye.